everyone, welcome back. Today I have the new Colourpop palette. It's called A Shadow of Secrets. Beautiful packaging. I'm loving these dark purple flowery vibes. Packaging also has a little bit of like a fluorescent feel to it when you look at these purpley pinky flowers, and some of the writing and some of the design is raised. Very beautiful packaging. In the back you have the shade names, and these little circles where the shade names are, that's also raised. They did a really good job with the way it looks on the outside. And then on the inside you also have more artwork in here instead of the mirror, and then here's what the color story looks like. There is one shade in here that's a little crumply and I got all over the palette. But other than that one crumply shade, the shades are pretty nice. I have 5 looks for you guys, so you get a really good feel of what this palette is about. But inside you have a lot of really dark, romantic, purple, burgundy colors. I think the color story fits very well with the outer packaging. So let's just get started. Let me show you the 5 looks, including the look that I have on my eyes right now, and then I will give you my final thoughts. Starting off with the shade called Trope. It's a nice grungy purple, and I'm putting it in my crease, and then I'm taking this light shimmer shade to blend out like my brow bone area and just to make it lighter since there was no light matte shade. Then I'm going in with Grumpy / Sunshine. It's a matte shade, but it has shimmer in it. Next, I'm taking the white shimmer shade called Bookish and applying it all over my lid. Going back into Trope and putting that in my lower lash line. This is the same shade as the crease shade. And then just packing on Bookish into the inner corner and just like cleaning up things and making it look nicer. And here is the finished look. I love a light bright lid with a dark outer corner. For my second look, I'm going in with Yes Sir and applying that in the crease, and then taking Trigger Warning into the outer corner. Then I'm taking this beautiful shimmer shade called Romantasy onto the lid, and then taking a lighter shimmer shade called FMC into the inner part of the eye. Then finally taking this matte shade called Claimed into the lower lash line. This shade is a very nice grungy berry shade. Now I'm just taking a black matte shade called Shadow Daddy to deepen out the outer corner. Then I went back into this light shimmer shade called FMC, and I wanted to create a different look in the inner corner of the eye. And here is the finished look. On to the third look. Taking the grungy purple called Trope and putting it into my crease, and then taking this gray shade called Morally Gray and putting it in the outer part of the eye. And then taking this beautiful shimmer shade called Beg For It, and I'm just applying it all over the lid. And then taking this lighter silver shade called Faded Mates and putting that in the inner part of the eye. Going back to that purple shade called Trope, and I'm just putting that in the lower lash line. And here's the finished look. I love the 2 shimmer metallic shades, Faded Mates and Beg For It. The silver one is so smooth and the gray one is also very smooth. And here are the 2 looks side by side. They look very different from each other. All right, now on to the 4th look. I'm starting with the shade called Yes Sir and putting that into the crease. Then I'm taking the purple shade called Trope and just putting that in the outer part of the eye. And then I'm taking the black shade to deepen up the outer corner. And then taking this beautiful shimmer shade called High Fae and putting that over the lid. This shimmer shade is very sparkly. It almost feels like a glitter, but it is super tacky. Then I'm just bringing the same shade from the lid called Trope into the lower lash line. And just trying to clean everything up, blend everything together. And here is the finished look. I think these colors are so beautiful and work so nicely together. For the last look, I'm starting with the same shade for my crease called Yes Sir. And then I'm taking the burgundy shade called Claimed and putting that in the outer corner. It did take me time to build up some of these shades, but they did eventually build up. Then I'm just deepening out the outer corner with the black shade. And then I'm going into this very beautiful, colorful, shimmery shade called Wingspan. It's beautiful and very easy to apply. And then I'm just bringing Claimed, the burgundy shade, into the lower lash line. And then I'm taking this beautiful silver shade called Faulted Mates into the inner corner. And here's the finished look. I think this glitter shade is absolutely beautiful. And here are both looks side by side. All right, on to the last thing. Here are the swatches of all the shades. You can kind of see from the matte swatches that the mattes are not the smoothest, butteriest shades, but the shimmers are beautiful. My final thoughts on this palette are that the shimmers are stunning. I love the shimmers. The only shimmer that I didn't quite like is the one that's on my eyes because it's so crumply. That's this one here in the corner. But as you see on my eyes, once you apply it and pack it onto your eyelids, it does look really beautiful. Most of the shimmers in this palette were really, really smooth. For example, these two right here in the corner, and then you have these two here in the middle, very smooth, very metallic. And then you have two shimmer shades in here that are more like glittery. That's this one here and this one at the top. They have a little bit more of a glittery feel, but they're not too chunky glittery. And the gray one actually looks like it's some sort of duochrome or multi-chrome, like different colors show up. You have gray, you have pink, you have maybe like an orange color in there. Very beautiful shade. The looks that I created came out looking very like sultry, darker, but still very shimmery and sparkly. The mattes in this palette felt a little bit more on the powdery side. They weren't super like bad or anything. I was able to blend them out, but they were not as smooth and soft and beautiful as the last Colourpop palette that I tried. And that was the Twilight New Moon palette. The mattes I felt were just so soft and buttery compared to this new palette, where I feel like the mattes were just a little bit more on the powdery side. And you can feel the difference when you actually dip your finger into the pan. Right then there you can tell, okay, this formula is a little bit more buttery smooth. But on the eyes, they worked out fine. You can build them up, you can blend them out or use less and create a lighter shade, but then you can build them up and create a more pigmented shade. So there is some flexibility. They were okay to use on the eyes, but I noticed that they definitely looked a little bit more powdery and grainy compared to the formula in the Twilight New Moon palette. But overall, very happy with this palette. I think packaging is very beautiful, and I am starting to become a Colourpop palette collector. They're just coming out with really nice themes and color stories. If I were to like rate this palette based on the 5 looks that I've created, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's not a 10 out of 10 palette because one, this white silvery shade here is very crumbly, very messy, and then the mattes are not as nice as I would have wanted them to be. But the shimmers are stunning and they're beautiful. And the other problem that I have with this palette is there are no lighter matte shades. So I really struggled with creating something of more like a smoky look because there just wasn't a variety of light to dark kind of gradient of color within the palette to be able to create something that's a little bit more smoky. Whereas one of my favorite palettes from Colourpop is this After Hours palette, where I felt like it has like such a good variety, where you do have lighter shades here, and then you have some mid-tone and darker shades. Like, it's a well-balanced palette. Whereas this palette is very dark heavy, and literally I felt like I was reaching for the same shade for my crease, this shade right here, for like a mid-tone color for me. So it is a very, very dark heavy palette with really beautiful metallic sparkly shimmers. I think for me, I would reach into this just for the shimmers. Like, I would create a look with a different palette and then reach into it to grab a shimmer that I think is absolutely beautiful. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you guys, and if you liked it, make sure you hit that like button, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Thank you. Bye.